Hey guys, it's Pete from Pete for Anxiety here, the mental health podcast, breaking the stigma that mental health is talked about in. Welcome in today's episode. Before we get started today, we need to cover a few things really quick. Let's talk about the Pete for Anxiety Patreon first off. It's only $1, guys. $1. What does $1 get you? $1 gets you into the exclusive episodes I am recording currently. I'm actually focusing on certain different diagnoses of things to show you guys what it actually looks like as it manifests in a person. So why not for $1, judges? Yeah, they said $1. I just checked with them too. See, they said it was okay. It was $1 anyways. Let's also talk about the Oracle Talk Radio Networks app. In case you can't be here live listening to me, watching this video, supporting the show, you can listen to it on the radio app. Why not? It connects us live to our 365 radio. Just go to your app stores and download the Oracle Talk Radio Network. You'll see the big old Oracle Talk Radio Network app logo right on there. Download it and it'll connect you to me, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, to Pete for Anxiety when I'm live doing my thing right here, informing the world and raising mental health awareness. So where are you going to be? 10 a.m., of course. Come on, we just talked about this. Pay attention for once. Damn, do y'all know how to listen? And as always, guys, like, follow, and share the YouTube channel. If you guys like what you're seeing, leave some comments, man. We want to know. I want to know if you like what you're on. You want to be on the show? Let me know. Hit me up at PeteVersusAnxietyPod@gmail.com. And as always, guys, enjoy the show. And by the way, did I mention to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well? Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure because some of y'all are hard of hearing in the back, may have to yell loud or get a megaphone or something. But, anyways, let's get today's show started. Y'all have a great one. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome into another exciting episode of Pete versus Anxiety, the mental health podcast, breaking the stigma that mental health is talked about enough. My guest today is an energy healer certified in life and self-care coaching, dedicated to helping women release emotional baggage and regain strength, freedom, and happiness. Please welcome the one, the only, Tenya Eickenberg. How you doing?
I'm doing great, and it's actually Tenya.
Oh, Tenya, there we go. I totally forgot to ask you before you started. But anyways, guys, you may recognize her actually from the Holocaust panel video. She was actually in the top right corner of the screen most of the time on there, and things like that. Just in case you're like, hey, I may recognize her, that's where you guys are seeing it from. But anyways, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Oh gosh, where do I start? Currently I'm an energy healer. I'm a self-care coach, and I healed from my own chronic anxiety and depression within 6 months of finding out what energy healing really was and how it could really impact our lives. And I love telling the story of how that came about because, on the outside, my life was absolutely spectacular at the time. But on the inside, I was just dying.
Yeah, and that's funny because that's why I tell a lot of people, like, just because people look like everything's great doesn't mean that something can't happen, or the people down the inside. It's interesting to see when you have people on the show, they start peeling back the layers and they're like, whoa, I didn't know all those kind of things that happen and things like that.
Yeah. And it's funny because I had what I call high functioning anxiety and depression, and I think that's what a lot of people deal with when people see or hear that somebody has depression or they're suffering from anxiety. This image of someone kind of being alone in their room and just with their thoughts. And if they're depressed, they don't want to get out of bed. They don't take care of themselves. They don't take care of their hygiene. If they're having, anxiety, they imagine people, sitting in the corner, just kind of like cowering in fear of going outside of the room. But that's not what mine looked like. Mine was high functioning. I held down a job. I took care of my hygiene. I did all that stuff. Mine was more internal. It was a huge internal battle that nobody could see.
Yeah, no, I agree because that's what mine's like. I held on a normal job. I do this. I podcast full time. Things like that. And most days people won't even know when I get clicked. They have no idea what's going on in my head, especially with my depression too. There's some days it's just like I'll get up to do this show and then I'll go right back to bed. I won't even say anything else to anybody else. I just stay off social medias and things like that. And everybody's like, oh, where have you been? And I'll tell them all, I'm like, oh, I've just been busy, doing whatever. Oh, you're busy doing podcasts? Yeah. And it could be a complete lie, but I'm not going to tell them because then they'll go, oh, well, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I don't want to hear all that. No, I'm good.
Right. Right. And to the people who we may not say that something's going on with us, it's not because we don't necessarily we don't not trust you with our feelings, or we don't not
Hmm.
trust you with being vulnerable. But the truth is that we were at a point where we're not ready to deal with something, and so we're not
Exactly.
to tell you that we're not feeling good because either we don't know why we're feeling the way that we're feeling, or we're just not ready to deal with it. And
And
that's
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 so
a
great put. Just to cut
conversation.
you out, that's amazingly put right there. That's exactly what I'm thinking too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I told some friends a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, when people come to you and they um if we're feeling bad and we do come to people because we want help. Sometimes when we go to people, they don't know how to help us, right? And that's when
Hmm.
you get I'm so sorry that you're going through that. That's got to be tough.
Yeah,
But
that's well spoken there too, because they don't know how to help us,
right,
or they get like uncomfortable depending what it is, and you come talking to them like, hey, I'm having these thoughts, and then they're just like, yeah, I don't know what to say.
right. And so we can't get mad at our friends and family for not helping us because they really don't know how. And if we don't know how to tell them what we need, then they can't help us. And that's when we need to find outside guidance that is not a friend, that is not family, somebody who has no attachment to our outcome.
Hmm. Hmm. That's true. I actually had to suggest it to somebody the other day. They were talking about something and they were saying some pretty outrageous things. And I was like, listen, with all due respect, I could listen all day, but I can't help you in this scenario. But you need to go seek some real help. Like, you need to stop what you're doing and you need to go talk to somebody, because you're at that level where I can't even help you. I could listen all day, but
Right.
it's not going to make you change any way different. The thoughts and everything else that are going on in your head are not going to be different. So you need to go find some professional help for something, God forbid, happens to you.
Right. And most of the time, people are going to be very standoffish when you say that, right? They're going to
Hmm.
be like, I don't, what are you talking about? I don't need help. I don't,
Right.
or you need to go, we should really go see a therapist. I'm not talking to anybody I don't know about my problems,
Yeah, that too.
and it's like, well, there's people out there that are not necessarily therapists, that are not necessarily doctors, that can still listen and help you.
Hmm.
Um, but you really have to be careful who you trust with your feelings, because there are some people out there who are not trained, who are going to give you wrong information. And if you follow that information, you could end up hurting yourself. So it's a very fine line on how, where to go when you're looking for help.
Hmm. Yeah. And that's the thing too. I tell people I'm not certified in anything. I'm just a guy that runs a mental health podcast who's just an average guy who hosts other people that come on. So when people are like, oh, go talk to Pete about these things, I'm like, you can come talk to Pete. Pete will listen to you, but Pete will tell you first off that he is not qualified to handle any of this. He'll listen to you. But if you get to that point, I'm saying, ding, ding, ding. It's time for you to go talk to somebody that is qualified to handle these things. You need to go seek some help. Like that situation I was just telling you about. I'm like, I'm
Yeah,
not trained in any way. Listen, this is all you need to go find somebody that can handle these problems, because your problems are beyond somebody just listening.
absolutely. And right. And there is help on all levels.
Hmm.
There is help in all dollar amounts. You just have to be willing to do the work to find the help. Um, start somewhere.
Exactly. And keep an open mind too. Now is what I say these days, because there's so many different things out there that, if traditional therapy isn't your thing, there's so many different routes you can go. And there's stuff like you do and other people do and things like that. Keep an open mind to these things, guys, because you never know. Something may click with what you like to do, or something that feels right in the retrospect of what you're thinking at that time. And and give it a shot, because you never know. And that's the great thing with the show, is that whenever I get people on here, I always put every way possible to reach you guys, so that if they see somebody on here, they're like, hey, I like what they're saying, or like what this person's saying, they can reach out to you guys and talk to you with these things, because therapy's great, but it's not for everybody.
Right, right. And energy healing is great, but it's not for everybody.
Hmm.
You know,
Exactly.
therapy didn't work for me because I didn't know why I was feeling the way I was feeling. I
Yeah.
was told by other people that because my mom was bipolar and manic depressive, that that's where my depression came from. But when I got into it on energy level, it had very little to do with my mom. It had a lot more to do with ancestral energies and generational trauma and that kind of stuff. Um, you know, and same with my anxiety. It didn't have to do with anything that I thought it had to do with because my ego was like, oh no, it's my parents' fault. You
Right.
know?
I love when people suggest things where they're like, oh, hey, just cheer up or these things. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm glad you think that's how this works.
Yeah.
Congratulations on such sound advice from me. You
Yeah. I
know,
mean,
it's like,
we
what?
know, right. We know how to be positive,
Hmm.
right? We you know, going through it, we know how to put on that mask and be positive. The problem is being positive is not all about, it's not what being human is all about.
Hmm.
Being human is about having those low vibration feelings. You're supposed to be sad. You're supposed to be mad. You're supposed to be worried. The thing is that we don't do as humans is we don't allow ourselves to feel those
Hmm.
because we're taught that they're icky.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah.
they're not icky. If you allow yourself to be afraid of getting up on a stage and talking in front of 10,000 people, you allow yourself to be afraid for 2 minutes before going up on that stage, that fear will go away.
Yeah.
But when
Yeah.
you resist being fearful, when you resist those emotions and those vibrations being felt in your body, you stuff them down. Well, now you've kind of, you know, think of it like you're constricting something,
Hmm.
right? If you try to you know the snakes in a can,
Yeah. Yep.
right? So that's your anxiety, and you're pushing that anxiety down into can and you're putting that top on. Well, the next time you have some anxiety, it's going to flip that top and that snake's going to pop out. And
Yeah.
it's going to
Makes
come
sense.
much faster because you haven't felt it previously.
Hmm.
And then you stuff it down again. And well, now you've got two snakes in the can. And so you have anxiety again and pops off. Everything
Yeah.
comes out. You just keep stuffing snakes in there. Eventually, you're not going to be able to stuff any more in because the can's going to break.
Yeah, that's true. Or, however you want to look at it, it's just the pressure builds and eventually it just explodes, all that. And it's great too, and then the thing too is like I got big into energy as well. I met a woman named Melanie. Before we even got a chance to interview, this was like somewhere like a couple months ago. I got big into it and I realized that I'm real sensitive energy, and I figured it out because I was like, I always had these weird feelings and things. And I'm like, I never understood what it was. I had no idea this thing even existed until I ran into this one person that just turned me on to this thing. I was like, you know what? Maybe that's what I'm feeling. And me and her were discussing it. And I was like, you know what? Hey, this is starting to make a lot of sense. And then to me, it was like, I'm like, okay, well, every time I took an interview, I was like, energy healing. Like, okay, what is that? First I wasn't sure what it was myself, but I kept an open mind. Because I'm like, hey, this, and you never know, this could be something interesting. And lo and behold, it was, because it's something that clicked with me. And I was like, now this makes a lot of sense. It explains like how I have this weird feeling every time I meet somebody. It's like, if I start having this like real anxious kind of feeling, it's like, usually means something not right about them I don't like, or like this hyper sense of like,
Mhm.
I could just say I don't like somebody, but I couldn't tell you why. And if I try to explain it to most people, they're just like, huh, what do you mean you just have this weird vibe? I'm like, they just give off weird vibes, man. Like you can tell, like you can read certain people. It's just like people that read body language and things like that. You can just have this sense of feeling, like it's like a sixth sense of like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
for some reason I don't like you, but I can't tell why.
So if people don't understand when you're saying that, ask them this question. Like when you walk into a room, you can sense whether someone's usually a good person or a bad person,
Hmm.
right? It just by them walking in the room. You can feel that energy, right? You can probably close your eyes and have someone move in like 3 to 6 feet from you, and you can start to feel their energy kind of start interacting with yours.
Hmm.
One of the things that I found when I was healing from my anxiety and depression was that a lot of the energy that I was releasing wasn't even mine.
Yeah.
It was energy from people that I had absorbed, either through the TV, like movies and stuff like that, violent movies. Like I can't even watch The Walking Dead anymore because of all of the healing that I have done. Like those kinds of, like, I can literally feel my body tense up because I've gotten so in tune with what my body likes and doesn't like that when I'm watching, and I've watched The Walking Dead, all 11 seasons, like 6 times.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite shows. But this past winter, when I started watching it again, I could start to feel my body just tense up because I could feel that energy coming from the stories. It
Yeah.
was insane.
It really isn't now that you say that, because like my wife had mentioned that too before. She's like, be careful with some of these that you watch. Like, you know, all these other like movies about demons and things like
Yep.
that. She's very cautious. She's like, don't watch certain movies in this household for a certain reason. You don't realize what's coming through with that.
You don't.
And I was like, I never thought about it until, you know, recently. Then I was like, you know, she's right, because she was always real upset about it. And I always laughed at it at first because I was like, you know, what is she talking about? It's just a movie, man. But I'm like, if you think about it, it's really not, because some of those are actually based on real stories. Like Amityville Horror is real, and in the Annabelle thing, if you go watch the whole Warner's, like you know, their whole background and stuff like that, and the actual, like, there's videos of people going in there and watching that Raggedy Ann doll moving around and things like that. And it's like, they're all like, oh, this is just for show. Yeah, you think so? I don't think so.
Well, not like that, but if you look at just movies in general, TV in general, the writers, those storylines, those characters came from their imagination. And in the energy world, we use our imagination as a way to kind of tap into our subconscious, to tap into our higher selves. And so these stories that people are creating are coming from their consciousness. So on some level, their subconscious believes that this stuff is really happening somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? Have you ever seen the show Stargate?
Mm-hmm.
So that's like, again, another one of my loves. I love Stargate. But after I got into the energy world and I would go back and watch some of those episodes, I'm just like, makes total sense now.
Right. It does. Like I said, ever since I met Melanie, everything started making sense, because it's like, you know, I was, and like beforehand too, like I'm not like a super religious person, but ever since I've accepted religion, I've been more open to everything in general. Like, you know, ever since then, it's just kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things. And then when I ran into her, I was telling her about some of these scenarios I had when I was younger. I was like, you know, this weird energy, I just felt this weird feeling, like it's a real tingly feeling, it wash over you. And I've had some pretty interesting experiences doing this show. Like there's another woman, she kept saying that she talked to someone named Spirit. And I don't know what happened. Like if you watch the episode, I go completely blank at one point because she's just talking to me and I'm so hyper focused on what she's saying. And this feeling just washes over me. And then I tell everybody the response of what was going on. So like most people are probably thinking I'm losing it at that point, because it's like, it was just this feeling I couldn't explain to you. It just washes over you. You're sitting there. You're so hyper focused. Everything else around you quiets down, and you go into this like tunnel vision type thing. And it's like nothing exists around you at all, except for what she was saying at that time. And I was just like, whoa. And that was the first start of it too. And then Melanie was like another week or two after that. And then she started talking, and I started talking to her about it. I still talk to her now about it. I message her all the time. I'm like, hey, listen, I got to tell you about something weird that happened. What do you think? And she's like, you know, and it happened a few weeks ago. I lost my godmother, and I was recording with somebody around like 10, 15, like about 10, 15 minutes into the interview. I stopped for a second because I had this weird feeling. Like it was like an ick or like a real weird feeling wash over me, like not really like something I like. And I was like, something's wrong. And I could tell something was wrong. And she was like, yeah, because you're connected to him on a deeper level. And I was like, okay, well, that makes sense, because now I don't feel crazy. I can actually ask somebody, hey, what do you think about this? You know, and have them explain it to me a little better. And I was like, well, that would make sense, because then I got a phone call later that day finding the news out. And it was just like, you know, and then I went back and looked at the Facebook message, and lo and behold, right there at that time, that's when the message was sent to me, and I didn't see it because I was recording. That feeling happened. I was like, oh yeah, now it makes sense too.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we are all energetic beings, and
Mm-hmm.
we all have the ability to feel energy, to sense energy. The big, the difference between each and every person is that it's just a matter of how awakened they are to understanding what's going on with their bodies.
Exactly.
Because our bodies are sending us messages all the time. That's why we have emotions. Emotions are energy in motion, and you have to be able to feel them. But was it like the silent generation is, what is, I think they're like going into their 90s or something now, but like going that far back, people were not allowed to have their emotions. They weren't even allowed to have excitement or joy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It just, even we stuff down the good feelings, but then those start to fester and rot and, start to cause problems as well. And that's why not just doing the energy work, but you have to do the conscious work as well. You have to learn to have your emotions and allow yourself to feel them. You need to have an outlet, whether it is journaling or talking or something. You have to have an outlet of where you're getting things out of your brain. You have to learn to be mindful and
Mm-hmm.
learn that it's okay to be alone with yourself and be alone with your thoughts, and get into a meditation practice where you can learn to control your thoughts instead of allowing your thoughts to control you.
Yeah.
That is the conscious work that we have to do. You have to set boundaries with not just with other people, but with yourself. If you're going to say that you're going to do something, hold yourself accountable and do that. And that is still something I struggle with on a daily basis.
Amen to that one.
Just holding
Talking.
myself accountable. But that's a part of being, again, that's a part of being human. That's why we come into this existence, is to have these lessons and to learn to experience life as a human being.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree.
We're just walking around in these meat suits, and we have these souls inside of us. Sometimes I imagine it like the little guy from, and you'll learn a lot of my references come from movies or cartoons.
Me too. Me too.
When I am working with a client and I get a download on something that I see a part of them doing during the session, it typically comes in through movies or TV or cartoons or something like that. But I imagine our souls like the little guy from Men in Black when
Mm-hmm.
when he's got the little Orion.
Yeah.
I imagine that's kind of what our souls are like. They're just these little us that is kind of sitting around in this meat suit that's helping us, learn and grow. But we're supposed to feel those feelings, and we're taught at a very young age, shh, don't cry, shh, don't be so loud. We're taught at a very young age to just be seen and not heard.
Exactly. And that's crazy though. And then now it's seen as like some of these other people are more in tune to their emotions. Oh, well, they're so emotional right now. I'm like,
Yeah, it's like you have no idea. They're actually doing much better than most of us.
Right, exactly. And it's a lot of people are trying to teach younger kids emotional regulation and things like that too at an early age so they can better understand those things. And it's interesting to see a lot of these guys that are doing a lot of the work like that. And it's like it's so new to everybody else, but really it's not. It's just like you said, we're always told not to do all these things, not to cry, not to make these motions. It goes for anything you think of. Really, men are not allowed to show emotions and things like that. And it's so taboo these days with a lot of things that people want you to say or want you to do. And then it's like all this misinformation floats around. It's so hard to decipher what's real and what's not real anymore.
Right. And that's why everybody needs to do their own research, figure out what works for them,
Mm-hmm.
and stand up for yourself.
Yeah,
know?
and I want to backtrack a little bit to where you said setting boundaries. I think that's one thing where a lot of people need to understand. You think you maybe can give them some tips on like how to set boundaries? Because I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, I don't want to do this or that." I had a friend that was having that issue. I was like, "Listen, you got to set some boundaries. You got to tell people, listen, this is how we're doing things." And a lot of people don't have enough. I don't even know what you want to say, what do you want to call it, but they don't have enough, strength to say it. To like sit down and say, "Hey,
Right.
listen, you know what? This is my boundary. If you pass it, you can consider yourself cut off, or give consequences to, hey, these are
Exactly.
my boundaries. You're not going to disrespect them."
And that's what a lot of people I think don't understand is a boundary is not saying, look, you're not allowed to do this to me. Done. That's not a boundary. That's a command. A
Hmm.
boundary is saying, look, when you do this, this is how I feel. And so I don't want you to do that to me anymore. And if you're going to do that to me, this is going to be the consequence.
Yeah,
There has to be a consequence, because then the other person is going to be like, well, what are you going to do if I do it?
exactly. You're going to keep crossing it because you're not going to do
Right.
anything reactive
Right.
to it. And it's just like, I had to tell her that too. I'm like, listen, you got to stand your ground. Like you gotta tell these people, and it had to do with a lot of like going on TikTok and things like that. And it's like, oh God, I swear to God, it's like these people want you to feel so obligated to them, like, oh, well, you gotta come check out my live. I'm like, that's great. I get 40,000 of those invites. It doesn't mean I answer half of them.
Right.
And then they
Yeah.
get mad when you don't come because they're so offended. Well, Tenya, you didn't come to my live. What's wrong with you? And you're like, yeah, well, you'll get over it, won't you?
Right. Yeah. 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 If anybody have you read the 4 agreements?
No, I should
Oh
though.
gosh, you should. 4 agreements. Don't take anything personally is one of them. And that is
Hmm.
one thing that I really I love all 4 of them. It's like my little Bible. But not to take things personally, because you don't know what's going on in someone else's life.
Yeah,
So those people who are getting mad at you for not joining their live because you have life to live, they're taking it personally. They have no
yeah.
idea what's going on in your life.
Hmm.
And they need to learn to not take it personally.
And then, yeah, that too, or they feel obligated, like, oh, I can't not go
Yeah.
live, or they're gonna be upset. Okay, well, they'll get over it at the end of the day. Your real friends will stay and understand. Other people
Yeah.
that aren't supposed to be here, they'll disappear, and that's the good
Well,
thing.
they will. People are meant to
Hmm.
come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
Hmm.
Um,
Exactly.
and the ones that we miss the most are the ones who come in for a season. It's but getting back to the boundaries, um, it is really difficult to set boundaries. One, if you don't know what boundaries you want to set. Um, and then if you have to set them with people that you consider friends or they're your family and you don't want to hurt their feelings, it even becomes even harder to set those boundaries, because you want them to still like you. You want them to still love you. And that's a huge fear for us, is that if I set this boundary, they're not going to love me anymore.
Yeah.
And if you desperately need to set boundaries and you're having a very hard time with articulating your words, do it in an email, do it in a text. Have that courage behind the screen to set your boundaries. And with the amazing introduction of AI, you can take your letter and you can put it into your chat GPT or
Hmm.
whatever AI you use and say, please help me rewrite this without pointing fingers at anybody, and make it compassionate and empathetic and to the point,
Yeah.
that I want to set these boundaries, and but if you cross these boundaries with me, this is going to be the consequence. Chat GPT is amazing for that. A lot of us who are relearning how to be emotionally regulated, we don't know how to write letters without being emotionally hyped,
Yeah.
right? When I used to get letters from my mom, and this was someone I had to set a boundary with her after I was getting all these emails. She would send emails and they would be in red, bold letters. If she was yelling at me, she would make them bigger. She would do all these things that you knew she was mad and she was yelling at you through an email.
Jeez.
And it was horrible. but I had to set a boundary, and I was like, you know what? And this was before ChatGPT. I just had my husband because he was much more emotionally regulated than I am or was. But I had to set the boundary that if she was going to send me emails or texts or talk to me in a way that was feeling manipulative,
Mm-hmm.
she was bullying me or belittling me, then I wasn't going to respond.
Yeah.
And I've kept that. Now, she hasn't done it very often. In fact, after I set that boundary, she didn't talk to me for 3 months. She told my dad that he needed to email me and tell me that I needed to just not contact her for 3 months, or not contact her, period. Just not contact her.
Right.
Which it was hurtful because like you're setting these boundaries for yourself, for your own mental health. And as parent, you do that with your parent, you hope that your parent responds back and go, I am so sorry that I ever made you feel that way.
Yeah.
I know my parents are going through their own crap,
Yeah.
right? I know that. However, they are still always the parent. I am still always their child, adult or
Mm-hmm.
not. But it took her about 3 months and before she talked to me again. And then on top of all of that, she acted like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, my
know?
mom's like that too. She would always do that, or like she was very abusive when we were kids. Like to me, she was, and like I'm talking like she got so bad she was stomping me out like she's trying to stomp out a fire, basically. And then she'll
Mm,
like, "Oh no, I never did those things. I never hit your dad." Like, because I always bring it up in a conversation, and I'd say something to like the kids, I'm like, "Watch out, grandma will whip you just like she whipped me back then. I never hit your father." What do you mean? I was there. I
yeah.
was there for these things, and you act like none of this happened, and you wonder why I decided to stop
Well,
talking to you for like 13 years because you
right.
don't seem to get it, and you're living your own world.
Right. Yeah, whenever your children come to you and say, this is how I felt at this time. This is what I remember happening. Whether it is true or not, that's their reality.
Yeah,
And unless you are in a court of law and you have to have documents that prove you didn't do it otherwise, there is nothing wrong with saying, I am so sorry that you had to go through that. I
yeah,
am so sorry that I had a hand in how you felt. You need to validate your kids because it's your kids' reality. You have a completely different reality as a parent than your kids do.
yeah,
And those of us who have suffered with chronic anxiety and depression, with chronic mental illness, and I say chronic because in this day and age, it is.
mm-hmm.
Right? There's millions of people who suffer with anxiety, depression, bipolar, I mean, millions of people on a daily basis. And what we imagine in our reality that happened to us.
Yeah,
And if our parents don't want to acknowledge that happened, that's on them.
exactly.
You've told them how you felt. You told them what you feel like you went through. And it's their egos who are going, "Oh no, I didn't do that."
Right. Or the reality, they don't want to accept what they did, and they're just like,
Right.
"Well, no, I never did that.
Right.
You're making up, or you're crazy," and they don't realize like how much negative effect that has when you try to tell somebody that, "Oh no, you're crazy." I'm like,
Right.
but
Now
am I though?
there are times where we may get our stories altered,
Mm-hmm.
right? Our story might be altered from what really happened. But we're never really going to know what really happened because you can't go back in time. So it's
Yeah.
more about not validating the facts, but just validating the feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because we put stories to the feelings that we're feeling. Right? It's like dreams, right? When you wake up from a dream, you're either in a good mood, you're in a bad mood, or you're scared,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what you were dreaming. Our our imagination, our reality, our stories that we put with our feelings that we're having, it's the same way. So what you went through with your mom absolutely happened the way that you feel that it happened, because you're feeling those feelings.
Yeah.
And for her to invalidate you because of her own ego is really unfair.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. So
So
but
let's,
you know, going forward with your kids,
yeah.
you know, even if they come back and say, Dad, you know, you did this, like, yeah, maybe I did. I'm really sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and that's a lot of what I deal with now is that I had before I even got my own mental health, I had a lot of issues with my own kids, and they don't really talk to me much, but it doesn't help though that their mom is a bit of a narcissist. So
Mhm.
she'll take things and she'll create them into a bigger reality than they were, you know, and she'll be like, she'll always spin everything to make it look like I'm the biggest problem. Oh, well, they went to therapy and their therapy is seriously saying this, and they're blaming you for all these things. And it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow when you have to
Absolutely.
sit there and listen to these guys tell you things, even though they don't really realize the whole story of what was going on completely, you know. And when
Yeah.
you try to tell them, hey, well, listen, I've had a lot of problems. I'm going to therapy. Oh, you're not going to therapy. How are you going to sit there and tell me I'm not doing something? It's
Right.
just like me telling them, oh, you didn't clean your room, and they clean the room. You know, same scenario kind of thing. So
Right. Yeah, my only and this is probably totally off topic, but my thing with therapy is that therapists only hear one side.
yeah,
They only hear one side. And I've been to therapy, and I have told my therapist all of the things that my mother that my parents have done. Right? They only hear one side. My mom goes to therapy, and therapist only hears all the things that the rest of the family has done to her.
hmm
But when someone comes back and says, my therapist told me I should say this to you, it's like, that's where I think that's where the line needs to be drawn, is
no,
that,
I think
you
you have
know,
a really good point with
therapist
that, though. If you think about
right.
it, though.
Huh?
Because I think you have a real great point that though. You think about it because you're only listening to the one side of the person. Like what on the other side? And I feel like that too. It's like you're only getting one side of the story. You're not getting both sides of the story.
Right.
And you would figure they would want to bring in the other person to make this story a whole story, and then you can get to the root of the problem.
Right.
But you know, like I said, with her situation, she's manipulating it. So it's like, oh no, we can't connect you with them because you know they have all these problems. So it's like, okay, so then when can I meet with them so we can discuss these problems together as a unit? Oh well, you know, I'll get back to you. Never gets back to me. Always avoids it completely because she knows that at the end of the day, when the real truth comes out, it's gonna not look so great as what she wants it to be. You know, and I hope that, you know, honestly, when they get older, they start to realize what's fact from crap, basically, you know. And
Right.
I'll
I was going to say, all you can do is work on yourself
mhm.
and work on creating a relationship, whether it is just by writing letters and either sending them or, you know, just popped it. I get downloads all the time. So this just popped in my head. But I think a way that you can do that, and if I've crossed the line, I
No,
apologize.
go ahead.
But create an email for each of your kids
Okay.
and then send them whenever you're thinking about them, whenever you want to tell them something or you want to write them a letter, whatever, send it to that email.
Okay.
And then when they are old enough and they're like, Dad, why didn't you ever contact me? You can say, I tried. And here's an email where I did send you emails
Mhm.
because I knew that if I sent them to, you know, if I tried to contact you through your mom, I don't know if you're getting them or not.
Yeah. No,
You
I
know,
agree
it's
with you.
just another, you know, another way of saying, because you have time and date stamps on all of those, right?
Mhm.
Um, that you're able to say, look, this is how I was feeling. And I wanted to reach out and I wanted to have a relationship with you. But at the time, it wasn't possible with the way things were.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's helpful or not, but
It's actually really helpful. It's really helpful if you think about it because, you know, everybody now is like, "Oh, show me proof." Well, here you go. Here's your
yeah,
proof. These are the emails I wrote, and these are the things it says. Here's the timestamps of these things. You know, now I couldn't send them like you said. I couldn't send them to your mom because I don't even know if you're going to get them from there. I don't know if she's going to doctor them
right.
and do whatever she wants to do.
Right.
and the internet's great for that, and it's a very negative for that, and
Yep.
Photoshop and all those other great things are great for that. You can change them how you want it and turn it to how you want it to look like. So,
Yeah. Yeah. But if you write, because I do that with journaling. So I have I have
mhm.
a journal email for myself where I'll email my journal email instead of doing a, paper journal all the time.
That's actually a great idea, honestly.
Um,
I never thought about having a journal email. That's actually a pretty good idea. Maybe that's something I should try and see. That way, it's the same outcome, though. I can like, here you go. These are the things. The only reason I didn't try to send them to you because I had another way besides
right.
to your mom, and then she'd gatekeep it basically from there. But
Right.
try not to be like negative to her and give into what she wants me to do to play into the reality that oh look, he's such a bad person. He's still making me look like a bad guy. Well, let them figure it out for themselves
They
what's
will,
going on.
and they will. They will. My mom, and I don't want this to sound like I continually bash my mom, but this is just
No.
stuff that I have healed from and noticed over the years. My parents are still together. My parents
Hmm.
have been married for, I am 49, so they'll be married 50 years this year,
Yeah.
right? And my mom would still put my dad down in front of us.
Yeah.
Last time I visited, my mom told me that my dad never wanted kids. And
Oh,
she's told
jeez.
me this before. So this is
Yeah.
the kind of stuff that my mom does, right? This is the kind of stuff that she did my entire life. But I really didn't notice it until I got to be around 35, 36 years old, something like that. Really didn't start taking notice to how she was treating my dad.
Yeah.
And I learned that it was not my dad who was the bad person growing up, that it was my mom.
Yeah.
So do your best to never paint your ex in a bad light.
Yeah. I've
You
made that
know,
mistake
even
before, but now I
even
don't do it like that. So,
right. So in the 4 agreements, one of the other agreements is be impeccable with your word. Always say what you mean and mean what you say.
hmm
So when we call people names, when we do
hmm
that kind of stuff, it does come back to on us on an energetic way.
yeah. Yeah.
So you can be angry and you can be mad, but we need to watch our words because what my mom would do to my dad has thoroughly come back on her through friendships and stuff like that. And it does not make you feel good when you have all of that bad energy coming towards you as well.
Yeah. Or I'd like to tell them to, think about what you're saying to somebody because you don't know if that person will be gone the next day because then you have
Exactly.
to live with what you say to them. And that's what I've always taught them the same thing, and it's something I should have lived by a long time ago. But, I'm, like I said, I'm working, like you said, work on yourself. Like
Yep.
what I've been doing since I started this whole thing. It's been a journey to my own self-discovery of who I am, and I'm learning more things about myself with every person I interview and things like that too. And I'm learning all these little things. Like I said, Melanie's the one that started off the whole energy thing. And I was like, well, now this makes more sense.
Yeah.
You just gave me a great idea with the journaling email. And I'm like, that's actually a fantastic idea. That way, when it comes to it, hey, where's this proof? Well, it's right here. You guys want it? I'll send them to you. Let me know where you want to send them, and I'll shoot them over to you. And you'll have this constant stack of just different things, and
Yeah.
you can see that it's like for them to sit there and say, oh well, you're not going to therapy, like you don't, like you said, you don't know what other people are dealing with.
Right.
And it hurts at the same time as I can see where they're skeptic because I've always said before I was going to do something about these problems and never did anything
Right.
until I finally met my wife. And her and we had a disagreement, and that's how this whole thing even started. Was just like I just went off for no reason, and she just looked at me and just said, okay. And I don't know what it is. The way she said it, it just hit me so bad, like a moment, like you're like, oh shit, what did I just do? And it kicked off the whole thing of like, I got to get some help because there's a problem here, and all she's done is like, she's taught me new things along the way. And the whole thing about, what you put out comes back. It's come back several times, and it's not fun. I'll be the first one to tell you,
Yeah.
it sucks, man. When you have to eat your own words and things you
Yep.
say, it's hard, man.
It is.
And it's like you're going to make mistakes. It happens, but that's when it goes to you got to think about what you're going to say to someone because when it comes back and it's thrown in your face, you got the pie in your face, preferably. You can't do nothing but be mad at yourself because you said those things to that person.
Right. Right. And all you can do is apologize.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up to them whether they accept that apology. But it's also important to forgive yourself for what you did in the past.
Yeah.
Because we are much harder on ourselves than anybody ever will be.
Yeah.
So give yourself grace and forgiveness for saying the things that you say.
Yeah.
But in that same tone, make sure that you're doing the changes so that you don't repeat those patterns.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. If you continue, if somebody calls people, names, they're in, driving down the road, they get cut off, and they're just calling people who cut them off horrible names.
That's my dad. Yep.
And one time they realized that they were wrong and they apologized. I'm so sorry that I called you, called you that name for cutting me off. I'm really sorry. And then the next day they call someone else a name for cutting them off. That's not changing the pattern.
Right.
That's not how forgiveness works.
Yep.
You forgive yourself and then you change the pattern.
That's my dad 100% when we were kids, man. You'd hear him say everything under the sun. He's just like had all these crazy references. I was like, yeah. Now if you talk to him now, he's a whole different person. Like
He
he's
grew
like
up.
he had a lot of things happen too. Like he had brain tumors and things like that. And he's had moments where he's lost memories and things like that. It's really interesting to see, all these things that, not a lot of people know that he dealt with. And it was interesting to see now, because now he tells you, hey, I love you and things like that. And it throws me off because as a kid, he never said that to me ever. It always like throw you off. And you're like, whoa, hold on. Where's this guy used to know that? Used to, every time somebody gets cut off, he'd start saying out 20 different racial slurs he could think of at the time. And it was funny because I always think of the George Carlin joke where he's like, there's something for everybody to get mad at you about. And he starts listing off like everything possible. I was like, I just think of my dad every time I hear that joke. I'm like, yep, that's my old man when we were kids, man. Somebody cut him off and he just start running down the list of things he could think of. And he'd get a quick glance there. Okay, well, you stupid. He just starts going. And I'm like, okay, really?
Yeah. And then it sounds like he started getting sick and realized that all those ways that he was treating people before really didn't serve him.
Well, he went to church and he had a kind of come to Jesus moment. And I guess he said when he told somebody about a lot of his things, it scared the hell out of somebody. And he just laughs about it because he's like, well, these are the things I actually dealt with the whole life. These are the things that happened in my life. And people are like, oh, it's okay. This is a safe space. Is it really though? Because I don't know if you can handle what I'm about to say next. And he just started telling us, but he's like, yeah, I think I scared somebody because like after I told him some things, he doesn't want to be my mentor anymore.
I get that. I work with with my clients, I work with a lot of entity or offensive energy attachments. And a lot of times during discovery calls, when I mention that, I often don't hear back from the potential client because, that part of the work scares them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not for everybody. Hearing our stories, hearing what we went through, hearing how we dealt with it, does often change people's perceptions of us. But that's okay. Those are the people who are supposed to come in for a blip and, either you're there to teach them a lesson or they're there to teach you a lesson, or you're both there to eventually help somebody else further down the road. You have to learn to just be okay with people walking out of your life because they're not always meant to be there forever.
Exactly. Or what is it? Melanie told me, said that they just don't like your energy. If their energy doesn't match with them, that's why they tend to be disappear and things like that, because they don't like what energy you're giving off. And it's okay. And I tell people that too. It's like, just think of it as like they weren't meant to be there. Like if they were really supposed to be there, they'd still be here. But if they're there for that blip, like you said, and they go away and come back, or whatever they decide, it's their own choice. Don't let those people affect you.
I look at it this way, that if people start to fade away as you're healing, as you're growing, and people start to fade away because they say that you're changing, they say that everybody around us is a reflection of ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? There's something in me that is in you that I'm being shown right now.
Yeah.
Right? And if you leave my life because I've healed and I've grown, it means I've healed and I've grown that part of my life that I no longer need to hold on to.
Yeah. That's true. It makes perfect sense. So you think of it from that aspect too. I mean, And a lot of people don't like to see it there. They're like, oh no, like you said, those people that show up very little is the ones you more worry about. It's like they
Yeah.
show up every so often. It's like, oh, what is this person up to? And
Right.
a lot of them sometimes they'll understand, and other people are just like, oh, okay. Or people, what did somebody ask me one time? They're like, are you mad at me? You
Yeah.
haven't come by in a while. Why would I be mad at you? If I told you I'm mad at you, is there something that you're getting that I'm mad at you?
Yeah.
I'm a busy person. Like,
Right. Those are the
I do,
stories that we tell ourselves to make ourselves feel better.
yeah.
You know.
And she was always asking me that too. She's like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm busy. Like I do this, I podcast, I do these other things. I'm like, I got too many things going on. I don't have time to sit here and waste energy with people that are not going to give the same effort back to me. So if I
Right.
appear and I'm there, okay, that's cool. I'm there. I'm when I get there. If not, you know where to find me. I'm not hard to find. I'm pretty hell, you can Google my name these days. I can tell people to Google me and I actually show up in a Google search. It's funny. It makes me laugh every time. So
It's so funny. I think it was last year. I took I think it might have been a month, maybe 2-month break from social media.
mm-hmm.
I didn't post. I still had like Messenger, but I didn't like get on and post things and like posts or anything like that. And I was amazed at how few people reached out to see how I was doing.
Yeah.
I was kind of amazed. I was like, my gosh, if I post on Facebook, I'm getting, 10, 15 likes, a few comments.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've gotten to the point where when you have that many things, when you have 15 people like your post, some people are like, oh, that's not a lot. I'm like, oh, no. See, I look at it this way. If I have 15 people standing in front of me going, oh, I like what you said.
Mm-hmm.
I really like what you said there. Oh yeah, I really love that. Like you have 15 people standing in front of you. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right. But when I was not on social media, I didn't have but maybe 1 or 2 people reach out to see how I was doing.
Yeah.
Which was crazy because at the time I had, I think almost 5,000 friends on my social media on Facebook.
Isn't that funny though? You have 5,000 friends, only a few of them check on you.
Yeah, it was pretty. But you really start to understand and see who is in your circle.
Yeah.
So when I got back on social media, I was like, all these people I haven't ever talked to, you're gone.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
not.
it's the same way I run a lot of my socials, like my TikTok. I leave the number there because everybody looks at the number, but there's a lot of people I don't hear from ever.
Yeah.
There are a few people that'll ask me where I'm at or how you're doing and things like that. And I just tell them I'm like, I'm busy. Honestly, I am really busy. It's between doing all these things. It's like I'll literally unplug myself a lot of times and just, kind of disappear just to see if anybody notices. Like, hey, like, what if I just disappeared? How many people actually notice I'm gone? And, that's where it really shows you who your inner circle of friends are.
Yeah. In your inner circle is about 5 to 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's your family. It's your close friends. That's really it. Don't worry about extended family.
Yeah.
Don't worry about kids you went to school with. That's
no, you're right. You're 100% correct. Because I do have a very limited circle of people. I tell people that I'm like, I have a small circle for a reason, and they look at you weird. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, you'll figure it out eventually because you'll have your own circle of people. The core value of people you trust, and then other people on the outside just kind of are on the outside looking in, and they want to be in that circle, but they don't understand what it takes to be in that circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's touch about your podcast really fast. The Metamorphosis Project, right? Isn't that what it's called?
Yes. Yep. Metamorphosis Project. Yep.
How did you come up with it, and what is the basis behind it? Because I found it. I haven't had a chance to listen to it. I was like, when I was getting ready for today, I was like, ooh, a podcast. All right. I like that.
Yeah. So my company is Design Your Existence.
Okay.
Because we, as human beings, we can design our own reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Metamorphosis Project is a podcast that I put together because I wanted to bring people on to talk about their stories of transformation. What did they use to heal whatever it is that they were healing?
Yeah.
Because there are so many people out there that are going through the same things. They're going through anxiety. They're going through depression. They're going through childhood trauma. They're going through cancer. Whatever it is they're going through. There is a different modality. There is a different way to heal. There's a different way to get through it from so many different people. And I wanted to bring those stories to light so that people, when they're going on to Apple Podcasts and they're searching, heal from thyroid cancer, right? They'll get a slew of episodes that may talk about how you can heal from thyroid cancer or from cancer, whatever. And they may touch on mine and listen to Kate Elliott, who healed her thyroid cancer through energy work and self-care, just by taking care of herself on those two levels. But we don't always have to use what one person tells us, right? We don't always have to use chemotherapy or radiation or whole foods or whatever. There's lots of different things that people use. And I just wanted to bring those stories to light. And, people love talking about themselves. And so I wanted to give people the opportunity to say, this is what I did.
Yeah.
Like, I did this. I found what was going to help me. I took my health into my own hands. And so I want people to be empowered that they have the ability to heal themselves. Yeah. They may need guidance. They may need a little bit of help in getting what it is that they need. But when they take that first step to saying, no, I'm going to heal this, because everything is healable.
Yeah.
We live in a country where sick care is priority. But we can heal everything. It's just a matter of what do we need in order to heal it and how long will it take?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe it won't be your lifetime, but what you do in your lifetime may help somebody else in the next lifetime.
Yeah, true.
So,
it's very true. I love that, though. I love that. Like I said, I saw it. I went and looked at it. I didn't have a chance to listen to it. So now I'm really going to have to listen to it now. I mean, because I like listening to podcasts. That's like when I started doing this, when I started listening to what other people were doing, just to have an idea of like, hey, what do I want to do with this show? What's the point of this? And I think at first it was, mental health awareness. It still is the same thing, but now it's like you get to watch me evolve as a person, because when I started in the beginning of this thing to now, you see a major change in how things are going for me. And stuff like that too. And you start watching me change into a different person, because now I'm big into energy and things like that. Before, at the beginning of this, I would have just looked at you like, okay, what the hell is that? What do you mean, man? But like, I've had a self-discovery along the way. Yeah. I ran into one person, and how they always say it, someone is in your path for a reason. It was a woman named Stephanie Michelle Aycock. And her and I had in an interview talking about her movie Bloom. She was talking about she's changing the way to look at mental health. There's so many of these things out there. She's like, but do we ever movies are great, but is there a movie that talks about these things in a different aspect? And she was talking about it. And afterwards she was like, hey, listen, let me tell you about something. And then that's how, I ended up on the site Podmatch and whatever. And I found all these great conversations I'm having, because she's like, hey, she said it without saying, she's like, hey, you should go check the site of up your guests, you'll have some better quality guests, and then at the same time, I do have a lot of professionals, but I do like having the real people come on and tell their stories. And and ever since the Melanie conversation, I look at my schedule and and if I don't feel like a good vibe's coming off this person, I'll replace them. I don't even care. I'll tell them in an email, okay, I've decided to go a different direction. Unfortunately, you don't fit it. I'm very polite about how I go about it. But at the end of the day, this is my show. This is my name. This is the direction I want to go with this. If I feel like you're not on that path we're going on, or you're not going to add value to this conversation, then see you later. It's no hard feelings. It's just you weren't fitting into what I'm doing at this point.
Yeah.
And to give you an idea, I'm booked out to October.
That's awesome.
On Mondays alone, booked out to October. And then during the week, I'm up to, I think, almost July now, of just different conversations of just different people. And I think as it goes, I continue to evolve the conversation of, what really is mental health awareness, because it's like everybody says we're talking about it, but where are we talking about it? Like there's all these podcasts that, they talk about it and stuff like that, but everybody else on social media is like, oh, we ought to talk about it all the time. Really? Where? Tell me, I'll wait for you.
Yeah. And I'm going to be the one that says that.
Do it. I'd love to go for it.
We can cure our mental illness. We can turn off the news. Shut down your social media once in a while.
Do it. I definitely agree with you. Shut down your social media once in a while. See how great it feels to not be stuck like being a mindless slave to these apps and everything else. And turn your phone on silent. That even helps too. Just,
Get
and
outside.
just look. And just look at how many people hit you up and things like how these different notifications come in. It's just like, I'm good.
Yeah, but get outside, hug a tree, walk in the grass barefoot, eat an apple, have some cabbage, just, and really, really sit and get to know yourself. Because you have all the answers.
Yeah.
You just have to trust yourself. But I will say that if something inside you tells you to hurt yourself, please go and find some help somewhere else.
Do.
Because that is not help.
Yeah, no, that's not.
You should not be doing anything that is going to cause you or anybody else harm.
Yeah.
That's why, meditation, journaling, reading uplifting books, just talk, yeah.
You're right. You're 100% correct.
I hate it when people say you can't cure anxiety, you can't cure depression, you can't cure, I think that, I think that frustrates me the most.
I think that's interesting because there's a video I did for my TikTok. It was like, is this girl I had on the show a couple weeks ago named Whitney came on, and me and her have known each other for a bit. She was saying, hey, I should come on. She came on, and let me tell you, this woman had 10 active viewers at the time we were recording this thing live. And it was so powerful that she said, she's like, my name's Whitney. I deal with, and it was listing off everything she deals with. I don't let it identify me as a person. So I went on TikTok. I did the same thing. And I challenged people. I was like, hey, listen, I'm challenging you all out there. Anybody sees this video, if you have enough guts to do it, go for it and record exactly what I'm about to say next. My name is so-and-so. This is what I deal with. It doesn't identify me as a person. These are the things I deal with.
Right.
And then the other thing I did was I was on another podcast called Humanity 2.0. And the question was, and I'm going to ask you the same question real quick right now. What does humanity mean to you?
Kindness, honestly.
You know what I'm saying? And it's an interesting question. You think about it.
Yeah. Humanity is kindness.
And
I have right now.
Mm-hmm. And also, I touched back to the conversation we had with Ben about how, his one message was just to love each other. After everything he dealt with, that was the only thing he was saying. And it's like, it was a powerful message. Even though this guy has been through everything, dealt with all those things, and it was such an eye-opener to see that, that at the end of the day, Ben's just like, just love each other, man. That's all I'm going to ask you to do. Like, regardless of everything I've dealt with and all these other things in the past and these heinous things I've seen, he's like, and his message is so powerful. And if anybody hasn't seen that, go watch the panel, man. This guy will blow your mind. I was like, I didn't want him to stop talking. I want him to just keep saying things. I'm like, go ahead, Ben. Go ahead, please continue.
We're just listening.
You know what I mean?
Definitely touched a part of my heart that, after I got off of that, I had to just sit in silence for a while.
Yeah, me too. I was like, wow. I was like, people were like, well, how'd it go? It was probably the most game-changing thing I've ever done in my life to hear somebody talk about what was going on, and the fact you can ask him questions and he would have no problem answering them for you. And his one message was just love everybody. I was just like, wow.
Yeah, like, I have to tell you, I had to stop listening to his book because my body was tensing up during the times when he was talking about the awful things that he had to go through.
Yeah.
And and I lived outside of DC, so I've been to the Holocaust Museum. So I know all of what happened, but to hear it coming through a book and then having met the person, it had a totally different, I'm getting goosebumps now. It had a totally different energetic vibe for me.
Yeah.
And my body was feeling like I was in that with him. Yeah. And so I had to stop listening because I didn't want to be in it with him. I just wanted to be an observer, and I could not just be an observer.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's really not, to me. It's really not. I get that feeling too, because you get that sense of feeling when he's talking. It's just like your skin's crawling because you're like, whoa. Yeah. Especially when he's mentioned, like, we're walking in, there's 10-year-old kids being thrown into these fire pits. I'm like, what? And he's just casually talking about it, like, oh, and it's just like, whoa, hold up. We're talking about that. Right?
Yeah, it was second nature for him. And it was just, it was mind blowing.
Yeah, it was interesting, and Keegan's the reason we even got into it, because Keegan and I have been talking for a while. He was actually a guest on the show too, and we met through a Facebook group one time. And if it wasn't for him, I'd never even had a chance to do it. He had reached out to me about it, and I was like, hell yeah. I was like, are you kidding? Hell yeah, sign me up. Before he could even finish typing something, I was like, yep, sign me up. Don't even tell me anything else. We know where I got to be. I want to be on this thing. I want to know. I want to talk to this person. I just want to hear the story, because it's so fascinating to hear the things that people dealt with. And, and he mentions Auschwitz and all that other stuff. And it's like, to have somebody that's actually made it through that and to hear their perspective, it's just so interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was.
Well, guys, as we get ready to wrap up this episode of Pete vs. Anxiety, Tenya, thank you so much for coming. This was an amazing conversation. I really enjoyed having you. I just had a good feeling about this conversation, and now I know why, because like I said, now I got some more ideas and things I could do. And you've been a pleasure 100% to be here.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. And do you want to go ahead and plug where everybody can find you? I will have it listed in the comment section for everybody that sees this video. All her information down below. You guys can reach out to her if you want to. But why don't you give them a quick rundown where they can find you?
Yeah, website is designyourexistence.com. Facebook and Instagram is @designyourexistence.
Definitely. You heard where to find her, guys. And I'm Pete vs. Anxiety. I'm pretty much everything. X all the way down to TikTok. I'm on Spotify, all the way down to iHeartRadio. And as I always say, it costs nothing, absolutely nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind act you could do can save somebody's life, or hell, you can make their day. I'm Pete vs. Anxiety, saying, don't ask how your day is today. Ask how your mental health is today.